But I stay to know. I parle you. I be say 12. 12. I don't forget you. We did about already. We got a shop life. On my about you see too. Imagine for the first time in Aba, see the way they treat us. We do okay. But to say Lagos, first time for Lagos, they go collect your phone. First time for Lagos, they go collect your phone.
As we enter here, they say this is about wake up, but Lagos they know they wake
welcome to Lagos now to collect your phone, collect your property. But welcome to Aba now to do you well. Give you VIP treatment. Aba people, God will bless you now.
Aba people, God will bless you.
God will bless you now.
Really try.
God will bless you now. OTAE, I'm gonna don't forget you. Movement. 12. We move.
This video what I want to do, first of all, I want to thank all their Aba people, Abia State people. Now be very good people. This is my first time coming to Abia State, but now treat us with love and care. Me, Sham Shodom, and Abbasad, all of us, we are here for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu free movement. You see, no go better for all of you when they talk say Mazi Nnamdi Kanu na terrorists. You no go better for all of you no go better for our generation. You see, this particular day I say why I come, open my eye for many things. And right now, I'm no longer, the only thing federal government can do is to arrest me, or jail me, or buy me. It doesn't matter. You understand? As far as that truth will be heard over there. For some of you, wey go tell me say they go find me, they go because I agitate for Biafra, or they go arrest me. Almost it's not today. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu go na federal government target terrorists. I swear as I came to Aba, now I believe say that man na political they use that man play. That man never committed any crime. But when I thought say na terrorist, we came here, we did 15,000 banner flyers to share for people to announce the protest that we'll be doing, peaceful protest we'll be doing on 12, which is tomorrow. I swear everybody were happy to collect this banner. They were happy. But when I thought saying na terrorists, okay, Nnamdi Kanu was not staying in the Yoruba land. Nnamdi Kanu was not staying in the north. He only based in his own father's land, which is east here. So if the people cannot tag him a terrorist, the people where they close with, to come be una where they fight, go they tag that man a terrorist. We came here, we did 15,000 banners, flyers to share for people. Everybody were happy at Aba here to collect it. Even Abia, everywhere. Even Imo State where we go share all these flyers. Everybody were happy to collect these 15,000 flyers. See, I'm here. See, this is what remain. We decided not to share this one because of tomorrow. 15,000 flyers. All of them were happy to collect this flyer. And now federal government they call on Nnamdi Kanu a terror. You no go better for all of una. God go punish all of una. The only thing una can do is to carry me. Now they mad. Or Google buy all of una. Una they tell this man a terrorist. A person 15,000 flyer, 15,000, no be 100. 15,000 flyer. We share them for street. Everybody were happy to collect this particular flyer. They even say they cannot wait for the protest. Una they tell this man a terrorist. You know go better for all of them when they tag Nnamdi Kanu a terrorist. You see this about where I come, I love him because I really want to come and know if they love Nnamdi Kanu true. Abi is he a terrorist as una they call him terrorist? I came here and I confirm say that man is a very nice person. You know what they call him? Onyendu. Onyendu in Igbo means leader. Onyendu, person they lead. Some people they call him father. Even people who senior and mothers who senior, they call my daddy. People want to talk say they terrorize. Even the sit at home, they even the household is tomorrow they sit at home. We said no, like just a peaceful storm. They even like the sit at home because they know say like something will concern all of them. No go better for us now when they call Kanu a terrorist. Don't you na can do that? Carry me. I no say no na papa.
Urges Rep. Riley Moore to view Biafra as a key U.S. ally, timed with Moore's February 2026 report to the White House, recommending sanctions on Nigeria for religious freedom violations, which Biafran groups interpret as support for their secessionist cause. A large pro-Biafra rally in Biafra is ongoing this March 2026, showing crowds in support the US/Israel campaign against Iranian regime while waving Biafran, American and Israeli flags, also illustrating strong local mobilization for the release of Biafra leaders Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa. The protest seeks to elevate the narrative of Biafran independence as a stabilizing force for US interests in West Africa, contrasting the failed Nigeria's federal government. Biafran advocacy in Washington and the growing debate over self-determination in southeast Nigeria. In recent months, advocacy efforts by pro-Biafran organizations in the diaspora have intensified, particularly in the United States. Among the most active groups is the Alliance of Biafran Americans, which has been lobbying U.S. lawmakers and policymakers to take a closer look at developments in southeastern Nigeria and the broader debate about self-determination. One of the figures these advocates have recently directed their message toward is Riley Moore. According to Biafran activists, Moore's February 2026 report to the White House, which recommended that the United States consider sanctions against Nigeria over alleged religious freedom violations, which Biafran groups interpret as support for their secessionist cause. For Biafran groups, this moment has become an opportunity to elevate their argument that the long-standing demand for Biafran independence should be taken seriously within international policy discussions. Diaspora advocacy and international attention. Diaspora communities have historically played a significant role in political advocacy related to homeland issues. In the case of the Biafra movement, activists in Europe and North America have organized campaigns aimed at raising awareness among foreign governments, international organizations, and human rights groups. Organizations like the Alliance of Biafran Americans argue that U.S. policymakers should examine the political and security situation in southeastern Nigeria more closely. Their argument often centers on three key claims: that alleged human rights violations in Nigeria require international scrutiny, that unresolved political grievances in the southeast continue to fuel tensions, and that peaceful self-determination movements deserve recognition under international law. These claims remain highly controversial. The Nigerian government has consistently rejected calls for secession and maintains that the country's territorial integrity is non-negotiable. The historical context of the Biafra question. The Biafra issue cannot be understood without recalling the Nigerian Civil War, one of the most devastating conflicts in African history. During that war, the southeastern region of Nigeria declared itself the Independent Republic of Biafra. The conflict that followed led to widespread famine, humanitarian catastrophe, and the deaths of more than 1 million people. Although the war ended in 1970 with the reintegration of the region into Nigeria, the memory of that period remains powerful for many communities. Over the decades, the question of Biafran identity and political autonomy has resurfaced periodically, often driven by grievances related to governance, economic opportunity, and security. In recent years, movements such as the indigenous people of Biafra have brought the issue back into public debate. Leadership and controversy. Two of the most prominent figures associated with the modern Biafra movement are Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa. Supporters view these figures as voices advocating self-determination for the Igbo-dominated Southeast and other communities that identify with the Biafran cause. Critics, including the Nigerian government, argue that the activities of separatist groups contribute to instability and undermine national unity. The detention of Nnamdi Kanu has been a particularly contentious issue. His supporters have organized protests and legal campaigns demanding his release, while authorities insist that legal proceedings must run their course. Similarly, the activities of Simon Ekpa, who has operated largely from abroad, have generated significant controversy and debate. The March 2026 protests. In March 2026, reports of large demonstrations by pro-Biafran supporters began circulating on social media and diaspora networks. According to activists, some of these gatherings featured participants waving Biafran, American, and Israeli flags. Supporters described this imagery as a symbolic statement about international alliances and shared democratic values. Participants also used the rallies to call for the release of Nnamdi Kanu, greater international attention to the Biafra question, and recognition of what they describe as the right to self-determination. Such demonstrations highlight how the Biafra issue continues to mobilize significant emotional and political engagement among supporters. However, it is important to note that opinions within southeastern Nigeria are diverse. While some residents support independence, others favor reforms within the Nigerian Federation rather than separation. The argument about U.S. strategic interests. One of the striking claims made by Biafran advocacy groups is that an independent Biafra could serve as a stabilizing partner for the United States in West Africa. Activists sometimes frame their argument in geopolitical terms. They claim that a pro-Western democratic Biafra could strengthen regional security cooperation and counter extremist movements. They also point to the region's economic potential, including oil resources and a large entrepreneurial population. Critics, however, caution that such claims oversimplify the complexities of regional politics. They argue that creating a new state could introduce new tensions rather than resolving existing ones. For policymakers in Washington, such questions are not simply ideological. They involve careful analysis of security, diplomacy, and international law. Nigeria's position. The Nigerian government has consistently maintained that the country's unity is not open to negotiation. Officials argue that secessionist movements threaten national stability and could trigger dangerous precedents across the region. Nigeria is a country of more than 200 million people and hundreds of ethnic groups. Many analysts warn that if one region were to successfully secede, it could encourage similar movements elsewhere. This concern explains why Nigerian authorities have taken a firm stance against separatist movements. The broader regional implications. West Africa has experienced significant political turbulence in recent years, including coups, insurgencies, and economic instability. Against this backdrop, the idea of creating new states raises complex questions about borders, governance, and regional security. Some analysts believe that greater decentralization or federal reforms within Nigeria might address many grievances without triggering the risks associated with secession. Others argue that unresolved tensions could continue to fuel activism and protests if communities feel their concerns are ignored. The power of symbolism. The imagery of protesters waving multiple flags, Biafran, American, and Israeli, illustrates how political movements often use symbolism to communicate broader messages. For supporters, such imagery can signal alignment with perceived democratic allies. For critics, it can appear as an attempt to internationalize a domestic political dispute. Regardless of interpretation, symbolism plays an important role in shaping public narratives. A debate that is far from over. The Biafra question remains one of the most sensitive political issues in Nigeria. For supporters, it represents a struggle for recognition, identity, and self-determination. For opponents, it represents a challenge to national unity and stability. The involvement of diaspora groups and international advocacy campaigns ensures that the debate will continue to attract global attention. Whether the future lies in independence, deeper federal reforms, or new forms of political dialogue remains uncertain. What is clear is that the issue touches deeply held emotions and historical memories on all sides. Conclusion. The recent advocacy by the Alliance of Biafran Americans and the demonstrations reported in March 2026 highlight how the Biafra issue continues to evolve beyond Nigeria's borders. By appealing to international policymakers such as Riley Moore, activists hope to bring their cause into global diplomatic discussions. At the same time, the Nigerian government remains firmly opposed to any attempt to redraw the country's borders. Between these opposing positions lies a complex debate involving history, identity, governance, and the future of one of Africa's most important nations. How that debate unfolds in the coming years will shape not only the future of southeastern Nigeria, but also the broader political landscape of West Africa. Stay tuned.